We're doing this video with 3 hours of sleep, so place your bets right now for just how much salt falls out of my pores. And yes, I have injured myself. Please don't at me in the comments. I am a dum-dum. Hi guys, it's Leanne, and we are here today to continue to disagree with each other. I mean, it's gonna happen. Let's just say it now. Let's clear the air. What we are actually back with is the next in my reviewing all of the books on my red shelf series. Recently, we reviewed all of the lowest rated books, and we discovered that I was right and you were very frequently wrong. This time, we're going to review all of the highest rated books, and you would think that there was a possibility that the opposite would be true. That the highest rated book may also have, been rated highly by me. Which I am prepared for disappointment because it is 2020. And before we dig into this video, I should point out that we have new helpers this time. We have Poirot and Miss Marple, because we done got a necessary upgrade. Because the other one said I'd thrown it down the stairs too many times, which, 2020, fair. Most of this, as I navigate my way to my Goodreads via the top average rating, is just by way of putting it off. Because I have a strong suspicion that I know some of the books that are going to be pretty high up here, and So once again, as we can see on my Goodreads shelf, there are quite a lot of graphic novels and sort of like coffee table books and things like that, which I rate because I've read them, but not necessarily because I want to talk about them in this video. So I'm only going to be reviewing traditional novels in this video. Okay, so let me see. Skipping past the graphic novels, the first actual novel I come to, is My Sister Millie by Gemma Dowler. Wowzers. I'm really shocked, and I mean, reasonably, I don't know why I'm so shocked, because the Millie Dowler case was such a huge media phenomenon in the UK. So many people knew about it, were invested in it. So I guess in that sense, I'm not shocked that it's quite high up on this list. But I am shocked, I guess, that it wasn't an actual fictional novel at the top, and also that out of all of the true crime that I have on my shelf, that this one was the most highly rated. So this one has a 4.66 of 793 ratings, and that just makes me sad, because this is literally the best true crime memoir I have ever read in my entire life. Now it is a chunker. Let's see if I can do this. It's right there on that shelf, so you can see how much like real estate it takes up. It is a really long book, but it is so worth it. I've said this before, but I think sometimes with true crime memoirs, I don't always expect them to be the finest pieces of literature in the world, because this is just somebody who something extraordinary has happened to, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they were a writer beforehand. But Gemma's a completely different case. This isn't ghostwritten, this is all her, and she can really write. And she goes to some quite honestly disturbing and terrifying places in her head, because of course when you don't know what's happened to somebody that you love, the constant questions start to eat away at you, and the uncertainty and the not knowing becomes everything. So I mentioned in my last video that I had stopped giving star ratings for books on my channel because they're just so subjective. Everybody's rating system is a little bit different from everybody else's, and I didn't feel like it was a really good guide anymore for you guys on whether I liked a book or not, and this is a perfect example, because I can see that I have rated this book 4 stars, and in retrospect it has stuck with me so very much that I'm going to change it right now to 5 stars, because it blew me away. Okay, heading back to the main page, there's a couple of shorts like 100 Hugs, which I absolutely love, and Oi Aardvark, which is part of a series that I absolutely love. And the next one that we've got to, is Just Mercy, A Story of Justice and Redemption by Brian Stevenson. I read this one in February and I gave it 5 stars. It was phenomenal, and it has 4.59 stars here with 141,120 ratings, all of which, every single one of which, are justified. Editing Leanne here, I had to re-record a couple of these screen grabs, as you can probably tell from the number discrepancies, And it is so cool to see that some of the books, especially Just Mercy, have jumped up by so many ratings. So just in case you wondered what happened there, that's what happened. Back to the video. I'm quite shocked that the first two books on the list I have just unequivocally agreed with. Maybe we have broken the streak where I'm right and you're wrong. I mean, probably not, but you know, we can dream. I'm sure that everybody knows what Just Mercy is about by now, because with the amazing social justice movement that is going on right now, it has taken off. So many people are reading this book as an eye-opener, as it was for me, to the injustice and inequality in the American prison system, specifically in the male prison system, and specifically the inequality towards the treatment of Black Americans. When I read this book, I went through this endless cycle of rage to what the fuckery to endless despair, because the system has been broken like this for such a long time, and people can see that it's broken but nobody seems to have a solution for it. And Brian doesn't claim to have all the answers in this book, but he does suggest some ways forward and some hope that can be garnered from his experiences. I absolutely advocate that you read this book, and the great thing is that looking down here I can see that most of you, that a massive chunk of you on my Goodreads friend list have already read it or have marked it as want to read, as something that you're going to get to, and that makes me really happy, because I think this one would be on Leanne's literature list for life. Okay, so far so good. We agree on the first two books. I am shocked that both of them are true crime memoirs, but let us see what the next one is. We'll see if our streak continues. Alright, so the next one is The Empty Grave, which is the 5th book in the Lockwood & Co series. I have, of course, given it 5 stars because that is one of my favourite series in the entire world. So it makes sense that, of course, later books in series will be on this list, because you're not gonna stick with a series if you're not enjoying it. So, you know, later books, stands to reason, will have higher ratings. But I am going to talk about this one. It has a 4.59 rating and it has 9,262 ratings on Goodreads, which is not enough. It is not enough. I'm judging you all, it's not enough. Obviously I can't specifically talk about The Empty Grave because that would be giving away spoilers for the series, so I will talk once again about The Screaming Staircase. I feel like I have talked about this series in every other video for almost a year now, and I'm just not sorry about it. And I have made a kind of loose rule in my head where for everybody who tells me that they've picked up Lockwood & Co because of me and have loved it, I can buy myself another book. So really, you're contributing to this mess over here. There's a couple of reasons that I absolutely love these books, which are quite obvious reasons. I love horror books, I love ghosts, I love haunted houses. All of these you will find in these books, and just because they're YA, do not think that they will be any less horrific. The lack of gore, in fact, only makes them more horrific. But the less obvious things include the fact that this is a found family novel. The 3 kids that come together to form the Lockwood & Co agency are a completely motley band. They come from all different places and none of them expected to be there together, and that doesn't necessarily mean that they like each other all the time, because you don't always like your family, right? You just love them. And other reasons include the absolutely punchy, witty dialogue, which sounds so real. I have an issue sometimes with YA novels where I'm like, kids don't speak like that. Teenagers, no matter how smart, I'm just gonna say it, they don't talk like they talk in a John Green novel. And this series absolutely smashes through that. They sound very, very real, all the way up to the cursing. So we are 3 for 3. I agree that this should be on the list and it should be where it is in comparison to the other 2 books. This is going far too smoothly. I'm scared. Alright, let's go back. Let's see what the next one is. Oh, okay, so another true crime memoir. Wow, I didn't expect this at all. I mean, I read a lot of true crime, so I guess it makes sense that it's prevalent on my read shelf, but I didn't expect to have like 3 in a row like this. So this one is I Let Him Go by Denise Fergus, and I gave this one 4 stars, which I stand by. It has a 4.58 on Goodreads, with 1,780 ratings. Okay. Let's chat about this one. So the Jamie Bulger case is another very, very famous case in the UK, and I have talked about it off and on this channel because I also read an absolutely stunning book called The Sleep of Reason, which documents this case in a very, very fair way, a way that looks at all of the children involved and not just at Jamie and his family, which is what a lot of the true crime books written about this incident tend to do. Did you need something? Are you just going to be here? Okay. You are now the star of the show and nobody cares what I'm saying about books. So, well done, your ends have been achieved. So I started with The Sleep of Reason, which I think was a really good plan, because I then went on and I read Jamie's dad's book, which was ghostwritten, very heavily ghostwritten, and I hated it. I DNF'd it, I couldn't finish it. And then I read Denise's book, and this is a very, very raw memoir about the ways in which she forever blamed herself for what happened. This one is another one which was not ghostwritten, it's entirely from Denise's point of view, and I was shocked by this one again in the clarity of the narrative and the way that I felt like I was with somebody who was very experienced in both telling a story and explaining emotions. So I would recommend Denise's book if you want to read about this story. All of that said, I agree with my 4-star rating. I am a little bit surprised that it's as far up on this list as it is, but it's still a very good book. Alright, back we go. What have we got next? And these are graphic novel collections. Okay, and next, of course, we have got Obsidio, which is the 3rd book in the Illuminae files, which I have, of course, given 5 stars. It deserves all of the stars. And again, it's that phenomenon where later books in a series are, of course, going to get higher ratings because you've stuck with it for so long. So this one has a 4.52 with 35,486 ratings, and I love it. But let's talk about this because I have a controversial opinion. Everybody that I speak to who loves this series loves Illuminae the best, and then Obsidio, and the middle book, Gemina, the least. And I don't understand you people. I don't understand at all. Illuminae is a race through space, and Obsidio is where everything comes together and there's a massive battle on many fronts, not just a battle, but like, you know, lots of things happen. However, it is one of my favourite ever thriller, horror, anything tropes, because we're locked in a space station and we're being slowly hunted, and we are also slowly doing the hunting. It's very much the isolated cabin narrative, but in space and on a space station where there is actually no running away anywhere. You're locked into the big metal revolving ball. It's one of my favourite characters in all of fiction in it, Ella. She is a kid who has lost most of the ability to move her body in a plague, and she runs the freaking show. She is a hacker extraordinaire, and all she wants is for her and her goldfish to get through this book alive. And I just think I might actually physically harm people for Ella Malikov. I'm that devoted to her. Okay, back we go. What is book 5? Book 5 is The Hate You Give by Angie Thomas, which I gave 5 stars. I absolutely, without any kind of chatter, stand behind that rating. So it has an average of 4.52 on Goodreads with 499,674 ratings, and it deserves every single one of them because it's freaking amazing. I'm really interested in the way this list has formed because I honestly thought that things like Illuminae and The Hate You Give were going to be right at the top, and yet some other lesser known books popped up there instead. This is an interesting experiment. Anyway, I listened to this one on audiobook, and not only was the narrator absolutely amazing, but it also gave me extra time to savour the story, because with an audiobook you're with it for usually like a minimum of 8 hours, right? And I feel like if I had physically read this one, I would have raced through it so quickly because I was so desperate to find out what had happened that I would forget to savour all of the tiny moments in Star's life which really shine through in the audiobook. The friends in the neighbourhood that she has, the businesses in the neighbourhood that are black run and that support each other and who absolutely support her, the tiny stands that are made every single day by choices that people in the black community have to make that Star recognises that people in the white community don't even realise are a thing. This book is one of those really hyped books that do sometimes scare me away because I'm like, oh, so much hype and expectation, but I'm so glad that I read it because it lives up to everything. Okay, let's see what we've got next. Okay, so next we've got The Creeping Shadow and Gemina, which as predicted are obviously part of the series that I've spoken about. I expected that multiple books from a series would be on this list, which is why I talked about the first one, so I'm just going to move past them, and we're clearly going to move past that. And as much as I would love to talk about Hamilton, I would love to talk about Hamilton, it's not a novel, so we're going to move past that as well. So the next one, okay, the next one that we've got is A Game of Thrones, Song of Ice and Fire Book 1 by George R.R. Martin. Such an obscure book that I'm sure none of you will ever have heard of. I gave this one 5 stars, and let's see how many ratings there are on Goodreads. So it has a 4.45 average of 1,997,094 ratings. Are we shocked? I'm sure we're not shocked. Okay. We're gonna need our sleeves up for this one, guys. I guess for me, what really works for this one is that I read in so many different genres, and so it does feel like high fantasy. It also feels like horror. It also feels like crime and thriller because there are definitely some like detective bits in there. It feels like mystery. There's bits of it that feel gothic. So I think the formula of this one just works so very well for me. And also I read these on audiobook, which yes are 11 million hours long. I'll put down here how long this one actually is. It's probably 50 plus hours. It's a huge book. And do I think it needs to be that long? No, not necessarily. Listening to these on audio by Roy Dotrice, who just has the most beautiful narrative voice in the world, perfect for this series, is just a treat. That very thing, the very reason that I love this one and that I loved sitting in this story for so long, is also the reason why I don't like subsequent novels. About 2/3 of the way through the second book, I start to get bored, and the whole third book was just... They need a lot more editing. There's point of views in there that I just don't care about. There's entire pieces of the society that I no longer care about by the ends of the books. And once again, I am thoroughly sick of epic fantasy series which are not finished, which have gone on for hundreds and hundreds of books and are not finished, or have gone on for even shorter than that. I'm looking at you, Patrick Rothfuss, and are still not finished. And they're the reason that now at this point in my life I read less high fantasy, because I just don't want to be conned in to getting invested in a world and then never finding out what happened. And that is all she has got to say about that. Well, I mean, quite honestly, I have more to say than that, but you know, I have to keep this video to at least half an hour. Okay, so that was 7. So what is 8? There's Santa's Husband. I'm not going to talk about it because it's not a novel, it's a graphic novel, but if you like queer things and you like Christmas, then you need to read that. Oh, okay, and then the next one we've got is This Is Going to Hurt, Secret Diaries of a Junior Doctor by Adam Kay. I didn't anticipate these books. I expected there to be more standalones and more classics on here, but apparently not. Okay, so I gave this one 4 stars. It has an average of 4.42 on Goodreads and it has 151,612 ratings. This one is a funny one for me, and I don't mean funny haha like Adam Kay is really funny. I mean it's a weird one, and this might actually be one of those books that I would knock a star off of. When I was reading this, I was obsessed with it, and I want to see if I can see when I started it. Okay, so it doesn't have my actual dates, but I read this one really, really quickly. I raced through it, and again, it's a format that I like in fiction and epistolary novel, where you get diary entries and like letters and things like that, and so this format does work for me in general, and that's part of the reason that I rushed through it so quickly. But also because Adam K is hilarious. He's irreverent, he's funny, he knows that he's funny, and he does very British dry humour, and I loved all of that. So on all of those fronts, it was really, really good. But unlike other memoirs which have really stuck in my mind, this is just not one of them. I have lost most of the salient details of this one. I don't remember a lot about any of the cases, and I also probably wouldn't read it again. I think, if we're being perfectly honest, now looking back on it, I would change my rating to 3 stars because it hasn't stuck with me. And although I do have his second book, which is called 'Twas a Night Shift Before Christmas, I think, I'm not really compelled to read it, and I feel like I'm going to end up giving it away to somebody who loved the book first time around. It's just not the best thing I've ever read. Okay. So did I just have to go through and make sure that was the 8th book that we had done? Yes, I did. I am terrible at keeping numbers in my head in the short term. So let's see what the next book is. What is happening with this list? Okay, so the next book is Bad Blood, Secrets and Lies in a Silicon Valley Startup by John Carreyrou. And I did not expect to see this on this list. I just didn't. Okay, so I gave this a 3-star rating. It has an average of 4.42, and it has 165,290 ratings. Okay, so I read this book in like 2019, and I don't know how everybody else found it because it was quite obscure on the list that I found it on, and I didn't realise so many people had read this, but apparently according to the cover it's a New York Times bestseller. Weirdest story I have ever read. It blew my mind that the CEO of the company got as far as she did with it. So from that perspective, it was a great read because I was just like, this is one of those true crimes which was a random, because it obviously doesn't focus on murder or any kind of like physical assault, which most true crime books do, and yet it's still very much true crime. It's about a massive fraud case, and I really like reading true crime like that, that's just kind of like completely out there and introduces you to a case that you would never known about any other way. And from that perspective, this book did exactly that. It was a very, very, very quick read. I listened to it on audiobook, and I actually listened to it on 2 times speed, which I never do. I think people who do that are absolute monsters. I love you all, but you're weird. I don't know, it just lent itself to 2 times speed. I wasn't losing anything by listening to it that fast, and I really enjoyed it. And as you can see, I gave it 3 stars because like I would definitely say if you're interested in it, definitely pick it up and read it, but it hasn't stuck with me. It's not one of the ones that I recommend very often. I'm very shocked to see it on this list. John Carreyrou is an investigative journalist, so it is written in a very journalistic way. It's kind of written like a New Yorker article, and from that perspective that's not the type of literature I like to read. It lacks a little bit of humanity. I don't feel like he interviewed a lot of the people who I wanted to hear from, probably because they couldn't say anything because they were under like federal indictment, but I wanted more humanity in this book and I didn't get it. It's very surface level, and that's why I just gave it 3 stars, because yeah, I might listen to it again in another couple of years, but it's not one that I'm reaching for now and thinking, oh, I need to reread that really soon like my sister Millie. I read that a couple of years ago now and I'm still like, I kind of want to read that again. Alright, what's the last one that we've got? Oh! Okay, this list is absolutely nothing like what I expected it to be like. I hope you guys have enjoyed watching me just be shooketh by everything that's popped up. So this is Beautiful by Katie Piper, which is a memoir. Again, I'm shocked about it. I can see just peeking down the page a little bit, that we've got things like The Martian and one of the Mercy Thompson novels, and then there's Terry Pratchett. Like, those were the kinds of things that I expected to see at the top of this list, not really random memoirs and true crimes. But okay, so this one has a 4.41 rating, and it has 3,103 people who have read it on Goodreads, and I've given it a 4 star, and again I think I would definitely stick by that. My mum actually lent me this book. My mum and me have very few literature crossovers, and so it's kind of special when we both read a book and then we can actually get to talk about it, and that was the reason that I picked this up in the first place, because I felt like I knew a lot of Katie's story. But this is actually a book that I'm really glad to have picked up, because knowing some of the stuff that happens earlier on in the book really informs now how I see her as a person. Whereas she was just another media personality to me, now I know her as the person who had anxiety and insecurities and was desperately trying to push through them to get into the kind of work that she wanted to. She's a very determined person. So I really liked this one. I only gave it 4 stars because, again, as with a lot of memoirs like this, Katie is not a writer, and so it wasn't as compelling as some of the other books that I had read on similar subject, just because Katie wasn't an experienced writer when she wrote this. Well, those were not the books that I expected to be on that list. I am shooketh. I expected to get way more high fantasy on that list. I expected to get way more really popular thrillers. Like, where was like Gone Girl and Sharp Objects and stuff? I'm really honestly surprised that we didn't get to things like A Little Life or even like any Leanne Moriarty books. Those are what I expected to be on this list. I was expecting to have to defend my favourites again. But instead we got a really eclectic non-fiction list. Who knew? Maybe I should have done this in November for Non-Fiction November. Don't worry, I'll be doing other things in November for Non-Fiction November, I promise. So, let me know if you have read any of the things that were on this list, or if you were as surprised as I was to see some of the things show up on this list. If you enjoyed this video, please consider liking and subscribing for more of my face. This month, my quarterly book club on Patreon is making me read a historical fiction book completely out of my comfort zone, so if you want to see me suffer, then, you know, you can head over to Patreon, and I will speak to you guys again very soon. Bye!